my philosophy when I was working professionally was that I had a 2P philosophy. And it stood for that you had to have purpose and passion. You had to believe in what you were doing, and you had to be excited about doing it. And it wasn't until I was sitting in the raft in the middle of the Hudson River that I realized I was missing a third and the most important P, and that was perspective. So after that, I felt that I could still have a career and have a second act, so to speak, but I wanted it to be where I could make a difference at a high level, but I would also have some flexibility to do other things with my life. I have four takeaways from the crash in terms of how I think I can discuss it from a board's perspective. First, when you look at the crash, the important thing is that you have the right person at the helm. So we were very fortunate that Captain Sully was our captain. Why do I say that? Well, prior to us crashing in the Hudson, there had never been a successful landing of a plane this size. And Captain Sully was the right person at the helm because not only did he have commercial pilot experience, he had glider pilot experience, and he had military pilot experience. So when I think of boards and how they're putting together their board and the composition of the board, they should take a page out of that book, which is you need to have a diverse board. You need members of the board who have subject matter expertise in the industry you're in. You need members of the board who are diverse, and diversity comes in lots of shapes and sizes: gender, race, ethnicity, thought leadership. At the end of the day, though, when you're building a board, particularly a visionary board, you need to understand what's the company's strategies, because skill sets is what ultimately is going to make for an effective board. And so the diverse skill sets and what the company's wanting to do with their strategy, those are the skills that you're going to want on the board to really help propel the company to the next level. The second thing that I would say I learned from the Hudson and how I relate it to my board experience is that courage is really important, particularly in a crisis. So in the case of the Miracle on the Hudson, if you watch the movie Sully, you'll realize that in basically less than 3 minutes, Captain Sully had to make a really important and dramatic decision. And he chose to go to the Hudson rather than going to Teterboro. And when I personally asked him about it, he said that he quickly went through with his military training. He was able to go through what are the options, what are the scenarios, what's the best case scenario. And he realized that if he was unsuccessful of landing in Teterboro, he would probably hit the apartment buildings that align the runway, and there would have been thousands of casualties. So in less than 3 minutes, he had the presence of mind to realize that if he went to the Hudson and he was unsuccessful, there would be limited casualties, 150 people and 5 crew members. That said, he was very confident he can do it, and obviously he did, and we're excited to be here. But that courage to stick to his guns, even when he was questioned by the federal authorities, is another admirable quality that I believe you want to have in the boardroom. Another takeaway I would say from my experience on the Hudson would be what I would call stick to the script. Nowadays, with public company boards and probably even some private company boards, there seems to be more of a push towards having shareholder engagement. And so when you're meeting with the shareholders, I believe it's important that the people that are speaking to the public have a script. And you also need to understand who's going to speak to the public. Could be the chairman of the board, could be the CEO, could be the chair of a committee, depending upon the circumstances. But everybody has to be on the same page, because if not, you could inadvertently run afoul of a regulation or maybe give away non-public information, which clearly would be a problem, and that would create its own set of issues. So in the case of the crash, clearly Sully and the flight crew stuck to the script. They told the truth of exactly what was happened, even under duress from the regulators. That said, the regulators had to do that. They have their own script of what happens when there's a plane crash. So, when I think of issues that, whether it's ESG, whether it's compensation, have your game plan. Know who's doing the talking and make sure you give them talking points so that everybody's on the same page. So that would be another example of how I could take that incident and relate it to the board round. And the fourth and last lesson that I would take away from my experience on the Hudson and how I relate it to the boardroom and board dynamics is in regards to making sure that you put the corporation ahead of yourself. And if there was any last thought that I have of the incredible hero Sully was and the incredible person he was and the character he has, was how after the crash, he walked that plane several times to make sure no one was left behind. Even if it potentially meant danger to himself, he didn't care. As the captain of that crew and the pilot of that crew, he wanted to make sure everyone was safe. And so that was an important lesson. Giving an experience that I had in one of my boardroom situations, I was working with a company that unfortunately had a downgrade. And based on the ratings downgrade, we had to make the difficult but right decision, which was to downsize the company. And then ultimately, we decided to also downsize the board because we felt that we needed to do it at the same time. And so when we were thinking about what was the best way to downsize the board, we felt that we needed to look at skills. And so ultimately, we decided to leave the directors in place who were the chairs of the committee because they happened to be the long tenured directors. And since this company now, due to the downgrade, was basically in a runoff situation, it wasn't going to be growing and potentially could be up for a sale, we felt that those directors had the most history and wisdom related to the particulars of the company. And then if in fact it was sold down the road, they would be able to leave and then the new company create their own board. So it was a difficult decision for all of us. I loved being on that board. I learned a lot from being on that board. But in the end, we knew we had to put the corporation ahead of ourselves, and myself and two other directors resigned.